When I called my granddaughter Emma to ask what time her college graduation ceremony would start, her response hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. "Oh, Grandma, that was yesterday. We only invited the people who really mattered to us." I stood there in my kitchen, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles turned white, feeling like the floor had just collapsed beneath my feet. This was the same granddaughter I had raised for 12 years after her parents died in that car accident when she was only 6 years old. I had spent the last 4 years paying her college tuition at $35,000 per year, buying her textbooks, sending her monthly allowances, and even purchasing her a car so she could get to campus safely. I had sacrificed my own comfort, eating canned soup for dinner more nights than I cared to count, just to make sure she had everything she needed to succeed. I had skipped vacations, postponed home repairs, and lived on a shoestring budget because Emma's education was my priority. The graduation dress I had carefully picked out was still hanging in my closet with the tags on, a beautiful navy blue dress that cost me $200 I could barely afford. I had been planning to surprise Emma with a $1,000 graduation gift, money I had been saving for months by cutting every possible corner in my budget. I had even invited my sister Margaret from Denver, who had already booked her flight and hotel room to celebrate what I thought would be the proudest day of our family's life. But Emma's cold words echoed in my mind. We only invited the people who really mattered. After 18 years of being her guardian, provider, and the only mother figure she had ever really known, I apparently didn't matter enough to witness her greatest achievement. I, who had attended every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game, was suddenly not important enough for her college graduation. The silence on the phone stretched between us like a chasm, and I could hear Emma breathing on the other end, waiting for my response. For the first time in 18 years of raising her, I had absolutely no idea what to say to the girl I had loved as my own daughter. "Emma, honey, I don't understand," I finally managed to whisper, my voice trembling with confusion and hurt. "I've been planning this day for months. I bought a dress. I arranged for Aunt Margaret to fly in. I even took time off work to be there for you." The words came out in a rush, as if saying them faster would somehow make the situation make sense. But Emma's response was even more devastating than her initial blow. "Grandma, you're being dramatic," she said with a tone I had never heard from her before, cold and dismissive. "It was just a small ceremony with my boyfriend's family and a few close friends. You know how you get at these events, always crying and making everything about yourself." I felt like she had just slapped me across the face through the phone. How I get at events? I had supported her through every milestone of her life, celebrated every achievement, and now I was being painted as some embarrassing burden. The irony wasn't lost on me that Emma was currently living in an apartment I was still paying rent for, driving a car that was still in my name, and had just graduated thanks to tuition money that came directly from my retirement savings. For 4 years, I had been transferring $1,500 every month to her account for living expenses, never questioning how she spent it, never asking for receipts or accountability. I had trusted her completely, and this was how she repaid that trust. "Emma, I've sacrificed everything for your education," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I thought we were family. I thought this moment would be something we'd share together." But even as I spoke, I could hear the desperation in my own voice, and I hated how pathetic I sounded. Here I was, a 73-year-old woman, begging her granddaughter for basic respect and inclusion. The silence that followed was deafening, and I realized that Emma had no intention of apologizing or explaining herself further. She had made her choice, and I clearly wasn't part of her future plans. But what she said next would change everything between us forever. "Grandma, I have to go," Emma said abruptly. "Derek's family is taking us out to celebrate, and we're already running late." Derek. I had never even met this boyfriend who apparently meant more to her than the woman who had raised her since childhood. I had heard his name mentioned casually in our weekly phone calls, but Emma had never brought him home to meet me, never suggested we all have dinner together, never included me in any part of this relationship that was clearly serious enough for his family to attend her graduation. "Wait, Emma, please," I pleaded, but I heard the dial tone before I could finish my sentence. She had hung up on me. My own granddaughter, the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who I had taught to ride a bike and helped with homework every night for years, had just dismissed me like I was some annoying telemarketer. I stood there holding the dead phone, staring at the graduation card I had left on my kitchen counter, with $500 cash inside that I had planned to give her. The house felt impossibly quiet after that call. I walked into Emma's old bedroom, which I had kept exactly the same since she left for college 4 years ago. Her high school trophies were still on the dresser. Photos of us together at various school events covered the bulletin board, and her stuffed animals sat neatly arranged on the bed. This room was like a shrine to our relationship, a relationship that apparently meant nothing to her anymore. I sat on her bed and picked up a photo from her sweet 16 party, where she was hugging me tight and smiling so genuinely. The Emma in that photo looked at me with pure love and gratitude. She had given a speech that night, thanking me for being her real mom, and promising she would always make me proud. I wondered what had happened to that girl, when she had become this cold stranger who could cut me out of the most important day of her life without a second thought. My phone buzzed with a text message, and for a moment my heart leaped, thinking Emma had realized her mistake and was calling to apologize. But it was from my sister Margaret. "Can't wait for tomorrow. What time should I be at the graduation venue?" I stared at that message, knowing I would have to call her and explain that there was no graduation for us to attend, that we had been excluded from a ceremony we had traveled hundreds of miles to witness. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I had been hit by a truck. I had barely slept, replaying that phone conversation over and over in my mind, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. I made my usual cup of coffee and sat at my kitchen table, staring at the graduation gift card and the navy dress still hanging on the back of my chair. Everything I had planned for this day now seemed like a cruel joke. I called Margaret before I lost my nerve, and her excitement was almost painful to hear. "Good morning, sister. I'm so ready to see our Emma graduate today. I bet you're bursting with pride." Margaret's enthusiasm made what I had to tell her even more devastating. I took a deep breath and explained the situation, watching her excitement crumble with each word I spoke. "She said what?" Margaret's voice rose in disbelief. "Eleanor, are you telling me that after everything you've done for that girl, she excluded you from her own graduation?" The pain in my sister's voice matched my own, but there was also anger there, an anger I was afraid to let myself feel. Margaret had always been protective of me, especially after my husband died, and I took on the responsibility of raising Emma alone. "Margaret, I don't know what I did wrong," I confessed, finally allowing the tears to come. "I gave her everything. I put her needs before my own for 18 years. I thought we had a bond that nothing could break." My sister was quiet for a long moment, and I could hear her processing everything I had told her. Finally, she spoke with a clarity that cut right through my confusion. But before I share what Margaret said to me that morning, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to continue following my family's stories. "Eleanor, honey, I'm going to say something you might not want to hear," Margaret began carefully, "but I've been watching this situation for years, and I think Emma has been taking advantage of your generosity. You've made her life so comfortable that she's forgotten what sacrifice looks like." Her words stung because deep down, I knew she was right. I had been so afraid of Emma feeling like an orphan that I had overcompensated, giving her everything she wanted without teaching her the value of what she was receiving. Margaret continued, "Do you realize that most college students work part-time jobs to help pay for their expenses? Emma has never had to work a single day because you've been supporting her completely. She's 24 years old, Eleanor, and she's never had to budget or struggle or appreciate what money means." The truth of her words hit me like a physical blow. I had wanted to protect Emma from hardship, but I had accidentally created someone who couldn't appreciate what she had. "But she's graduating with honors," I protested weakly. "She's done so well academically." Margaret's response was gentle but firm. "Yes, because you removed every financial stress from her life. You gave her the luxury of focusing only on her studies while you worried about everything else. But graduating with good grades doesn't make someone a good person, Eleanor." I thought about all the times I had sent Emma extra money when she called saying she needed it for emergencies that were never clearly explained. The spring break trip to Mexico that cost me $2,000. The laptop upgrade that was essential for her studies. The designer clothes she claimed she needed to fit in with her classmates. I had said yes to everything, thinking I was being a loving grandmother, but maybe I had just been enabling selfishness. The more I reflected on our relationship over the past 4 years, the more I realized how one-sided it had become. Emma called when she needed money, texted when she wanted something specific, but when was the last time she had called just to see how I was doing? When was the last time she had asked about my health, my loneliness, my struggles? I couldn't remember a single conversation where the focus wasn't on her needs and wants. After hanging up with Margaret, I did something I hadn't done in years. I looked at my bank statements with clear eyes. The numbers were staggering and heartbreaking. Over the past 4 years of Emma's college education, I had spent $178,000 on her. Not just tuition, but rent, food allowances, car payments, insurance, clothes, trips, and countless emergencies that she never had to explain in detail. I calculated that I had been sending her almost $4,000 every month when you added up all the various expenses. $4,000 a month to someone who couldn't even include me in her graduation ceremony. I had depleted most of my retirement savings, postponed necessary medical procedures because I couldn't afford them, and lived like a pauper so that Emma could live like a princess. The most painful realization was that I had been doing this while living in isolation. I had turned down invitations from friends because I couldn't afford to go out to dinner anymore. I had stopped taking the art classes I loved because the monthly fee seemed frivolous when Emma needed money. I had even canceled my cable subscription and started shopping at discount grocery stores to save every possible penny for her expenses. Looking back, I could see how Emma had gradually trained me to prioritize her needs over my own well-being. It started small when she first went to college, with requests for a little extra money for textbooks or supplies. But over the years, the amounts grew larger and the requests more frequent, until I was essentially financing her entire lifestyle, while she focused on having the college experience I never got to have. What hurt most was realizing that Emma knew exactly how much I was sacrificing for her. She had seen my old car, my worn-out clothes, my empty refrigerator when she came home for holidays. But instead of feeling grateful or concerned about my welfare, she had simply accepted my sacrifices as her due. That afternoon, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible just 24 hours earlier. I called my bank and canceled the automatic transfer that sent Emma $1,500 every month for her living expenses. I also contacted the apartment complex where she lived and removed myself from the lease agreement. If Emma wanted to continue living independently as a college graduate, she would need to take responsibility for her own expenses. The bank representative seemed surprised by my request. "Mrs. Thompson, you've been making these transfers regularly for 4 years. Are you sure you want to cancel them?" I could hear the concern in her voice, probably wondering if I was making this decision under duress or due to some cognitive decline. But my mind had never been clearer about anything in my life. "Yes, I'm absolutely certain," I replied firmly. "I want to cancel all automatic payments related to my granddaughter's accounts, and I want to remove her access to my credit cards as well." As I spoke these words, I felt a strange mixture of fear and liberation. Fear because I was stepping into unknown territory, and liberation because I was finally taking control of my own financial destiny. I spent the rest of the afternoon calling various companies to remove Emma from my car insurance, cell phone plan, and credit card accounts. Each phone call felt like I was methodically dismantling the elaborate support system I had built around her life. It was exhausting work, but also surprisingly empowering. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based on my own needs rather than hers. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I ordered takeout from my favorite Chinese restaurant and watched a movie without checking my phone every 5 minutes to see if Emma needed something. I ate my dinner slowly, savoring flavors I had almost forgotten because I had been living on such basic meals to save money. The simple pleasure of enjoying good food without guilt felt revolutionary. The next morning, Emma called bright and early, but this time her voice had a completely different tone. Gone was the dismissive coldness from our last conversation, replaced by barely concealed panic. "Grandma, something's wrong with my bank account. The monthly transfer didn't go through, and my rent was supposed to be automatically deducted yesterday. Can you call the bank and fix whatever error they made?" "There's no error, Emma," I said calmly, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I canceled the automatic transfers yesterday. From now on, you'll need to handle your own financial responsibilities." The silence that followed was so complete I thought the call might have dropped. But then Emma's breathing became audible, quick and shallow, like someone trying not to hyperventilate. "You can't be serious," she finally managed to say. "Grandma, I just graduated. I don't have a job yet. I need time to find work and get established. You can't just cut me off like this without any warning." The entitlement in her voice was breathtaking. She was treating my financial support like a utility service that couldn't be discontinued without proper notice. "Emma, you're 24 years old with a college degree," I replied. "Most people your age have been supporting themselves for years. You've had 4 years to prepare for financial independence, and you chose to assume I would continue supporting you indefinitely." I could hear her moving around, probably pacing in the apartment I had been paying for, trying to process this new reality. But what she said next revealed just how little she understood about respect, gratitude, or family relationships. And it made me realize that cutting off the money was just the beginning of what needed to change between us. Before I tell you what happened, let me ask, have you ever had to make a tough love decision with someone you care about? Share your experience in the comments. "This is ridiculous, Grandma," Emma said, her voice rising with frustration. "You're being completely unreasonable. I'm your only grandchild, your only family. Everything you have is going to be mine eventually anyway, so what difference does it make if I get some of it now when I actually need it?" Her words hit me like a physical blow. She wasn't just taking my financial support for granted. She was already planning my death and calculating her inheritance. Emma, did you just say that my money should be yours because you're going to inherit it anyway? I asked, wanting to make sure I had heard correctly. The casual way she had mentioned my eventual death, as if it were just a business transaction waiting to happen, showed me exactly how she viewed our relationship. I wasn't her beloved grandmother. I was her retirement plan. Well, yeah, she replied, apparently not understanding why I found her statement problematic. I mean, that's how families work, right? You take care of me now, and then when you're gone, I'll have the house and your savings. It's not like you have anyone else to leave it to. The brutal honesty of her response was both refreshing and devastating. At least now I knew exactly where I stood in her life. I thought about my will, sitting in my desk drawer, which indeed left everything to Emma. I had updated it just 2 years ago, adding specific provisions to ensure she would be comfortable for the rest of her life. I had imagined her reading it someday, with tears in her eyes, understanding how much I had loved her. Now I realized she would probably just see it as delayed payment for services rendered. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest, I said quietly. If I didn't have any money to give you, would you still want a relationship with me? The question hung in the air between us, and her hesitation to answer told me everything I needed to know about the true nature of our bond. Emma's silence stretched on for so long that I began to wonder if she was still there. When she finally spoke, her voice was careful and calculated, as if she were trying to find the right words to manipulate the situation back in her favor. Grandma, that's not fair. Of course I love you for more than your money, but you have to understand my position here. I'm just starting my adult life, and I need support while I get established. You needed support for 4 years of college, Emma. How much more time do you need to become independent? I asked. Most of your classmates will be starting entry-level jobs and living with roommates to split expenses. They'll be driving used cars and shopping at thrift stores while they build their careers. When did you become too good for that kind of normal young adult experience? Her response revealed just how disconnected she had become from reality. But I shouldn't have to live like that, Grandma. I graduated summa cum laude from a prestigious university. I deserve better than some cramped apartment with roommates and a beat-up car. You raised me to expect more than that. The entitlement in her voice was staggering. Somehow, my desire to give her a good life had created a young woman who believed she was above the struggles that build character. Emma, I raised you to be grateful, hardworking, and kind, I replied. But somewhere along the way, you became someone who excludes the person who loves her most from important events, then demands continued financial support without any appreciation or respect. My words seemed to genuinely surprise her, as if she had never considered that her behavior might be hurtful or inappropriate. I'm not ungrateful, she protested. I say thank you when you send money. I call you every week. I visit during holidays. What more do you want from me? Her definition of gratitude was transactional at best. She was describing the bare minimum of polite interaction, not the deep emotional connection I had thought we shared. The realization that she saw our weekly calls as a chore she performed to maintain her funding was heartbreaking. Emma, when was the last time you asked about my health? I asked quietly. When was the last time you invited me to visit you at college or suggested we spend time together that didn't involve me giving you money? The question seemed to confuse her, as if the concept of being interested in my well-being had never occurred to her. I don't understand what you're getting at, she said defensively. You're healthy, you have your house, you have your routine. What would we talk about? Your life is pretty simple compared to everything I'm dealing with right now. The dismissive way she characterized my existence was devastating. To Emma, my life had no complexity, no challenges, no emotional depth worth exploring. She had no idea that I had been struggling with arthritis pain for 2 years, but hadn't mentioned it because I didn't want to burden her during her studies. She didn't know that I had been lonely and depressed, eating dinner alone every night while sending her money to go out with friends. She was completely unaware that I had been considering selling my house to help fund her post-graduation expenses because my savings were nearly depleted. Emma, my life isn't simple, I said with growing firmness. I've been sacrificing my health, my social life, and my financial security to support your lifestyle. I've been living like a hermit so you could live like a socialite, but you never bothered to ask about any of that because you were too focused on what you could get from me. The phone went quiet again, and I could sense Emma's growing panic as she realized this conversation wasn't going the way she had expected. She had called to demand that I fix a banking error, but instead found herself in a confrontation about the fundamental nature of our relationship. What she said next would prove that she still didn't understand the gravity of the situation. Okay, fine, Grandma. I'm sorry if I haven't been asking about your life enough, Emma said with the tone of someone apologizing for a minor social oversight rather than years of emotional neglect. But can we deal with that later? Right now, I have a real crisis. My rent is due, my credit cards are maxed out, and I have no income. I need you to transfer at least $3,000 today to cover my immediate expenses. The fact that she characterized her financial irresponsibility as a real crisis, while dismissing my emotional pain as something to deal with later, showed me exactly where her priorities lay. Even in the middle of a conversation about respect and gratitude, she was still primarily focused on getting money from me. Her apology was just a hurdle to overcome on her way to making another financial demand. Emma, how are your credit cards maxed out? I asked. I've been sending you $1,500 every month for living expenses, and I've been paying your rent directly to the landlord. Where has all that money been going? I realized I had never asked for an accounting of how she spent the money I sent her, trusting that she was using it responsibly for necessities. Well, college is expensive, she said vaguely. There are lots of costs you don't think about. Social activities, clothes for internships, networking events, spring break trips that are important for making connections. Plus, Derek and I have been going out a lot, and restaurants near campus are really pricey. The casual way she mentioned spending my money on her boyfriend made my blood boil. I had been eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner so she could take her boyfriend out for expensive meals. I had been wearing the same winter coat for 8 years so she could buy clothes for networking events that were probably just parties. The level of my own foolishness was almost as painful as her ingratitude. So you've been using the money I've been sacrificing to send you on entertainment and luxury items while I've been living in poverty? I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. And now you want me to send $3,000 more to bail you out of the consequences of your own irresponsible spending? It's not irresponsible spending, Grandma, Emma protested. It's called having a normal college experience. Everyone else's families support them through school and help them get established afterward. Why are you being so mean about this all of a sudden? The way she framed financial accountability as being mean showed me how distorted her perspective had become. Emma, everyone else's families don't support them the way I've supported you, I replied. Most college students work part-time jobs, apply for scholarships, take out student loans, and live frugally. They don't have grandmothers depleting their retirement savings to fund luxury lifestyles. I was beginning to understand that Emma had no concept of how unusual and generous my support had been. But you always said education was the most important thing, she countered. You told me to focus on my studies and not worry about money. You said you wanted me to have opportunities you never had. Now you're acting like supporting my education was some kind of burden. The way she twisted my words to make herself the victim was masterful manipulation. Supporting your education and funding your entertainment are two completely different things, Emma, I said firmly. I paid your tuition, your rent, and your living expenses so you could focus on learning. But somehow that morphed into paying for your entire lifestyle so you never had to experience any responsibility or consequences. The conversation was revealing years of accumulated resentment I hadn't even realized I was carrying. Every sacrificed meal, every declined social invitation, every postponed medical appointment had been building up inside me, and now it was all coming to the surface. But Emma's next statement would push me past the point of no return in terms of our relationship. You know what, Grandma? Maybe you're just jealous, Emma said with a cruelty that took my breath away. You never got to go to college, you never traveled, you never had nice things. Maybe you resent that I've had a better life than you did, and now you're trying to punish me for it. The accusation was so unfair and hurtful that I actually gasped out loud. Jealous? I repeated, my voice shaking with emotion. Emma, I gave up my better life so you could have yours. I chose to sacrifice my comfort, my security, and my happiness to give you opportunities. How dare you suggest that I'm jealous of the life I personally funded and made possible for you? Well, if it was such a sacrifice, why did you do it? She shot back. Nobody forced you to send me money. If you didn't want to help me, you should have just said no from the beginning instead of being a martyr about it now. The complete absence of gratitude in her response was staggering. She was actually angry at me for having supported her too generously. I realized that Emma had never learned to see me as a real person with my own needs, dreams, and limitations. To her, I was just a resource that existed to make her life easier. The idea that I might have my own desires for comfort, travel, or financial security had never entered her mind because she had never been asked to consider anyone's needs besides her own. Emma, I helped you because I love you, I said quietly. But I'm beginning to understand that you've never learned to love me back in any meaningful way. You've learned to accept my love and my money as your due, but you've never learned to give anything back. The truth of those words settled over me like a heavy blanket, final and undeniable. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to know, have you ever had someone accuse you of jealousy when you were actually being generous? How did that make you feel? Let me know in the comments because this conversation is about to take a turn that will shock you. Emma's response to my heartfelt statement was the final straw that broke any remaining illusion I had about our relationship. Oh, please, Grandma, don't be so dramatic. Of course I love you. But love doesn't pay my bills or solve my problems. I need practical support, not emotional lectures about gratitude. The clinical way she separated love from practical support showed me that she viewed our relationship as a business transaction. If love doesn't pay bills, Emma, then maybe you need to find someone whose love does, I said with a clarity that surprised us both. Because my love has been paying your bills for 4 years, and apparently that means nothing to you. I could hear her sharp intake of breath, finally realizing that she had pushed me too far. Wait, what do you mean by that? She asked, panic creeping into her voice for the first time. Grandma, you can't just abandon me. I'm your granddaughter. We're family. You can't turn your back on family. The sudden invocation of family loyalty was rich coming from someone who had excluded me from her graduation because I wasn't important enough to invite. Family doesn't exclude each other from major life events, Emma, I replied. Family doesn't take financial support for granted while showing no interest in the person providing it. Family doesn't accuse their benefactor of jealousy when they express hurt feelings. You've shown me very clearly what kind of family member you are. I thought about all the family functions she had skipped over the years, all the holidays she had spent with friends instead of me, all the time she had been too busy to visit but never too busy to cash my checks. The pattern was so clear now that I wondered how I had been blind to it for so long. But I need you, she said, her voice becoming smaller and more desperate. I don't know how to handle all this stuff on my own. I've never had to pay rent or manage bills or budget money. You never taught me how to do any of that. The accusation that I had failed to teach her independence was the final insult in a conversation full of them. Emma, I tried to teach you responsibility, but every time I suggested you get a part-time job or learn to budget, you said it would interfere with your studies, I replied. Every time I mentioned that you might need to start planning for financial independence, you assured me that you would figure it out after graduation. Well, congratulations, you've graduated and now it's time to figure it out. But you can't just throw me to the wolves like this, she pleaded. I thought you cared about me. I thought you wanted me to succeed. The manipulation in her words was so transparent that I almost laughed. She was trying to make my refusal to continue enabling her sound like I was sabotaging her success. I do want you to succeed, Emma. But real success comes from overcoming challenges, not from having every obstacle removed by someone else, I said. You're a smart, educated young woman. You have everything you need to build a successful life. You just need to start building it yourself instead of expecting me to keep building it for you. This is so unfair, she said, her voice taking on the whining tone of a petulant child. Derek's parents bought him a condo when he graduated. My roommate's family gave her a car and 6 months of expenses to get started. Why are you the only parent figure who's being so cruel about this transition? The comparison to other families was telling. Emma had never bothered to learn about the financial situations of these other families, never considered that they might have resources I didn't have, or that their support might come with different expectations and boundaries. She simply assumed that everyone owed their children the same level of support regardless of their circumstances. Maybe Derek's parents can afford to buy condos because they didn't spend $178,000 on college expenses, I suggested. Maybe your roommate's family has money left over because they required their daughter to work and contribute to her own expenses. The number I had just shared seemed to hit Emma like a physical blow. $178,000? She repeated in a whisper. You've spent that much on me? For the first time in our conversation, she sounded genuinely shocked rather than defensive or manipulative. The concrete figure had somehow made my sacrifice real to her in a way that abstract discussions of support had not. Yes, Emma, and that's just the past 4 years, I confirmed. It doesn't include the 12 years I raised you before college, or the car I bought you, or the insurance I've been paying, or any of the other expenses I've covered without question. The silence that followed was the longest pause in our entire conversation, as if she were trying to process the magnitude of what I had given her. I had no idea it was that much, she said quietly. I mean, I knew you were helping me, but I never added it all up. I guess I never thought about where the money was coming from or what it meant for your life. This was the first hint of genuine awareness she had shown, the first acknowledgement that my support had come at a personal cost. Emma, I've been living on less than $1,200 a month for the past 4 years, so I could send you almost $4,000, I explained. I've been eating cheap food, wearing old clothes, and avoiding medical care so you could have everything you wanted. And until yesterday, I was happy to do it because I thought we had a loving relationship built on mutual respect. We do have a loving relationship, she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. I guess I never realized how much you were sacrificing. I thought you were comfortable, that helping me wasn't a big deal for you financially. The admission that she had never bothered to consider my financial situation was both heartbreaking and illuminating. Did you really think I could afford to send you $4,000 a month without it affecting my own life? I asked. Did you never wonder why I never traveled or went out to eat or bought myself nice things? Did you think I was just naturally inclined to live like a pauper while funding your luxury lifestyle? Emma's voice became very small as the full weight of the situation began to dawn on her. I guess I thought you were just simple in your needs. Like you didn't want the things that I wanted. I never considered that you might be going without things you wanted, so I could have what I wanted. The word simple stung, revealing how she had diminished my desires and complexity to justify her own selfishness. Emma, I'm 73 years old, I said gently. I've been dreaming of traveling to Europe since I was your age. I've wanted to take art classes, join a book club, maybe even go on a cruise. But every month when I had to choose between my dreams and your needs, I chose you. Every single time. The weight of all those deferred dreams suddenly felt overwhelming. I'm so sorry, Grandma, she whispered. And for the first time, her apology sounded genuine rather than strategic. I really didn't understand. I thought you were happy just helping me. I never realized you were giving up your own dreams to make mine possible. The crack in her voice suggested that she was finally beginning to grasp the full scope of what had been happening. The graduation ceremony wasn't just about being excluded from an event, Emma, I continued. It was about realizing that after giving up everything for you, I had become invisible to you. I wasn't important enough to include in your proudest moment, but I was still expected to fund your next chapter. That's when I understood that our relationship had become completely one-sided. But we can fix this, she said desperately. I can change. I can be more grateful, more considerate. I can start paying attention to your life and your needs. Please don't give up on me over this mistake. Her plea was touching, but I wondered if real change was possible after so many years of established patterns. Tell me in the comments, do you think people can really change their fundamental approach to relationships? Or are these patterns too deeply ingrained to overcome? Your perspective might help me figure out what to do next in this situation. Emma, I'm not giving up on you, I said carefully. But I am giving up on being your financial safety net. Real change can't happen as long as you know you can fall back on my money whenever things get difficult. You need to experience the natural consequences of your choices and learn to solve your own problems. My words seemed to terrify her more than anything else I had said. But what if I fail? She asked, her voice breaking. What if I can't find a good job right away? What if I can't afford my apartment? What if I make mistakes with money and get into trouble? The fear in her voice was real, but it was also the fear that comes with growing up, the fear that every young adult faces when they start taking responsibility for their own life. Then you'll figure it out, just like millions of other people do every day, I replied. You'll get a roommate to split expenses. You'll take a job that isn't perfect while you look for something better. You'll learn to budget and prioritize. You'll discover that you're stronger and more capable than you think you are. I could hear her crying softly on the other end of the line. Will you at least answer when I call? She asked through her tears. Even if you're not sending money anymore, can we still talk? I know I haven't been a good granddaughter, but I want to try to be better. I want to learn about your life and your dreams. I want to have a real relationship with you, not just a financial one. Her words gave me hope that maybe this crisis could become a turning point for both of us. Of course, I'll answer when you call, Emma, but our conversations need to be about building a real relationship, not about solving your financial problems. I want to hear about your job search, your daily life, your hopes and fears. I want you to ask about mine too. Can you do that? Yes, she said immediately. I promise I can do that. I want to learn how to be a better granddaughter. I want to know about your dreams of traveling to Europe and taking art classes. I want to know what you've been giving up for me all these years. The sincerity in her voice was something I hadn't heard since she was a child. Emma, I need you to understand something important, I said gently. This isn't punishment. This is me believing in you enough to let you discover your own strength. You're capable of so much more than you realize. But you'll never know that as long as I keep solving all your problems for you. I'm scared, Grandma, she admitted. I don't know if I can do this on my own. Her vulnerability was heartbreaking, but it was also the first honest emotion she had shown in years that wasn't anger or entitlement. But I understand why you're doing this. And maybe it's what I need to finally grow up. The conversation was winding down, but I could sense that both of us were processing a fundamental shift in our relationship. For the first time in years, we were talking to each other as real people rather than as provider and beneficiary. 3 months later, Emma called me with excitement in her voice that I hadn't heard since she was a little girl. Grandma, I got the job. It's just entry level at a marketing firm, but they said there's room for advancement. I start Monday. The pride in her voice was infectious, and I found myself smiling wider than I had in months. That's wonderful, Emma. Tell me everything about it, I said, settling into my chair for what I hoped would be a long conversation. Over the past 3 months, our weekly calls had become the highlight of my week. Emma had been sharing her job search struggles, her budgeting attempts, and even her fears about growing up. In return, I had started telling her about my own dreams and daily experiences. Well, the salary isn't huge, but I found 2 roommates to split a smaller apartment with, and I've been learning to cook instead of eating out all the time, she continued enthusiastically. You would be so proud of me, Grandma. I made a budget spreadsheet and everything. I'm even putting a little bit into savings each month. The transformation in Emma's voice and attitude had been gradual but remarkable. The entitled young woman who had excluded me from her graduation had slowly given way to someone who was discovering the satisfaction of earning her own way. She had learned to appreciate small victories and find joy in simple accomplishments. I am proud of you, sweetheart, I said, meaning every word. You've become the independent, capable woman I always knew you could be. And Emma, I have some news too. I've enrolled in those art classes I always wanted to take, and I'm planning a trip to Paris in the spring. The gasp of delight from her end of the phone warmed my heart. As we ended our call, I reflected on how cutting off the money had actually saved our relationship rather than destroying it. Emma had learned to value things she had to work for, and I had learned that true love sometimes means letting people struggle and grow. We had both discovered who we really were when money wasn't the foundation of our connection. The hardest lesson I learned through this experience was that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their weakness and start believing in their strength. Emma didn't need my money as much as she needed to discover her own capabilities. And I didn't need to sacrifice my dreams to prove my love. Today, our relationship is stronger than it's ever been because it's built on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. Emma visits me regularly now. Not because she needs something, but because she genuinely enjoys my company. She asks about my art classes and my travel plans with real interest. She shares her work challenges and relationship struggles because she values my advice, not my checkbook. The young woman who once excluded me from her graduation ceremony recently asked if I would help her plan a small dinner party to celebrate her 1-year work anniversary. She wants to cook for me, to show me how much she's learned about taking care of herself and others. That invitation means more to me than any graduation ceremony ever could have. Sometimes love means saying yes to every request, and sometimes love means having the courage to say no. The difference is knowing when each response will help the person you care about grow into their best self. Emma needed to learn that she was capable of building a life through her own efforts, and I needed to learn that my worth wasn't measured by how much I could give away. If you've been supporting someone who has stopped appreciating your sacrifices, or if you've been struggling with setting boundaries with family members who seem to take advantage of your generosity, remember that real love sometimes requires tough choices. The people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries and find ways to build relationships that don't depend on what you can provide for them. What do you think about Emma's transformation? Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to help someone you love learn independence? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear about your experiences with family boundaries and tough love situations. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about family, relationships, and the courage it takes to make difficult but necessary changes in our lives.